The unofficial theme of this last year at Forest Brook was transition. Our leadership had been sensing for some time that God was calling us out of one season and into another, even though it wasn't and isn't totally clear what that will look like. We've been on a journey, knowing that what God has given us isn't a roadmap, but the promise of His presence and provision, and a vision for what's on the horizon. And in the meantime, we continue to build our faith and tune our ears and hearts to listen for His gentle voice of guidance. When you're on a journey, though, it can seem like it's taking a while to get to your destination. It can be hard to live in between. This past year wasn't without challenges, but it has truly been an unexpected gift to be reminded over and over that God is still God of this season too. There's so much growth and discovery and delight to be found on the journey. We've sensed that each change has been like a breadcrumb along the path, that God is inviting us to move forward rather than turn back, and to trust Him that He is in it all.
There were significant shifts in our staff team this past year. Last year, we said goodbye to Yvonne Ford, who had served as children's pastor for 8 years. At the end of June, we celebrated Donna Moss's retirement after 25 years with us as care pastor. A 10-month-long search for a worship pastor didn't end up with a filled position. And with each shift, God has reminded us that this is the story He's writing, for each one of us moving on to new places, and for His church here at Forest Brook. He's got us. Our team has continued to be adaptable and creative, and God has provided for the needs of this season by way of interim contract positions to help round out the team. Of course, we've also leaned on many of you as we forge our way forward. We're in this together. We're excited to see how God continues to use and grow the team here and lead and serve our spiritual family.
We continue to strive for a values-driven approach in our ministry, being captivated by Jesus' invitation to live freely and lightly and the unforced rhythms of grace. Looking first to Jesus, watching how He does it, letting Him teach us, and then doing likewise. As His followers, we're also His apprentices. Last fall, we explored the call to love your neighborhood, infusing intentional connection, prayer, and care for our neighbors into the celebrations of Fall Fest and the Unmarket. We practiced generosity, hospitality, and practical kindness in real time, extending the love of Jesus to our neighbors, here in our physical footprint in Ajax, and to our most vulnerable neighbors across the Durham region. What a joy to see many of our rental friendships spill over into these events. Familiar faces, filling our spaces and feeling right at home here. And then with the help of the summer's longer days and looser routines, we created space to learn together through experience, because Jesus was big on that. Because Jesus rested, we practiced a rhythm of rest. Because Jesus shared meals to deepen friendships and welcome strangers, we ate together at community dinners. Because Jesus asked questions, we regularly turned our chairs to face one another, making room for questions and discussions on Selah Sundays.
With open hearts, we began to dream together last winter about what we'll build, recognizing that this isn't about a building at all, but the spiritual community we will build into the future here at Forest Brook, together, empowered and led by God. Celebrate and Connect was a rich and meaningful evening of praise, poetry, music, and connection celebrating Black History Month. We shared a meal, united as one people, recognizing the way God's own character is reflected in and amongst our diversity. A beautiful thing happened when a group of young professionals decided to reimagine what meaningful connection could look like for their cohort. We celebrate what this crew are building together. They continue to gather regularly around sports or games or meals, and are growing a safe space to journey together that's centered around Jesus.
After a particularly challenging few years of pandemic pivots, families rekindled connection with one another, sharing several super fun events, skating, the Maple Sugar Bush, special breakfasts, and more. Building community has been our focus as we find new rhythms for gathering on Sunday mornings, and we did this not only within our children's ministry bubble, but extended that to include the community garden, the kitchen, library, and our own Forest Brook Community Food Cupboard. As we recognized our grade 6 and grade 12 grads who made those big moves from the reality of child to teen to adult. We were honored to cheer them on and continue to be inspired by the next generation and their unique connection to and expression of God's love. Under our first student-only leadership team, camp thrived. 4 weeks of day camp filled up at record speed, and last summer was one of the best yet. Each week, the church was filled with excited campers, and mostly families from outside of our church, which is exactly the way we like it. As kids got messy, loud, and silly, they learned about God's love through the stories of Jesus, that God is for them and that they belong in His family. Oh, how sweet the sound.
Toward the end of this chapter of the Forest Brook story, the word flourish began to take the shape of a theme and an intention. We were understanding that a big part of this season of transition is actually not about form or structure as a church, but about our hearts as a community of Jesus followers. So as we turned the page to the next chapter, we made a commitment that in the year ahead, we would resolve to make space for listening to God as a community, that we would cultivate new rhythms for growth, and that we would reimagine what it means to share the fruit in community. Sure, seasons of transition can be tough, and the in-between can be a tricky place to navigate. But the unique way that we have experienced God's might, provision, kindness, and grace because of this season is simply incomparable.
So the journey continues with our almighty, ever-present God, this faithful little family that we call Forest Brook, and the picture on the horizon, a community forging deeper connection with God and with one another, where everyone belongs, especially those who are typically excluded elsewhere. A people who are bursting with worship and are committed to listening, learning, and discovering, and who remain agile to respond when His Holy Spirit says, "Come." Forest Brook, in the next season and beyond, may you flourish.